Mike Quirke joins us on the line. Good morning to you, Mike.
Hey, good morning.
We do want to chat about the Super 8s. That's going to be the bulk of this piece, but I just want to get your quick take on the Orla O'Dwyer situation there. It seems like the death of the dual player is upon us in the men's game, but in the ladies' game, it's already further down the line. I mean, there's no chance for this young woman to actually play both her games. Captain of one of the sides has to make a 30-kilometre journey between games under one day.
Yeah, you see these come up every so often, and they're probably, at this stage, they're probably still the exception rather than the rule, but it's just like it's a farcical situation that has, whether it's a men's game or a women's game, it's a ridiculous scenario that we're trying to get somebody to play 2 championship games in the same day within a matter of hours. And I mean, this facade then about player welfare and stuff like this, that you hear about, is just, it's kind of laughable when you see situations like this. But to be fair, I think we're starting to see them probably a little bit less, but still, it's farcical.
Yeah, like you see a bit of it across all the GAA games at the moment, Mike, in terms of fixture organisation, in terms of, say, underage games being played on the same weekend as a senior game, and they're at varying parts of the country and all of that. Like, it kind of comes back to the idea of a holistic view towards fixtures in the GAA, and that solution doesn't seem to be coming anytime soon.
No, and it needs to be a serious discussion that involves all the key stakeholders to actually come up with some kind of a solution. But this is a really complex and multi-layered kind of problem that's involving so many different groups, even within counties, even like you talk about fixtures in Kerry alone, club fixtures, and when you look at what goes into actually trying to avoid clashes and avoid these kind of collisions, you're taking in hurling and under 20 county hurling, and something that you'd never factor into in club fixtures in Gaelic football with Kerry, and then when you bring that to kind of a national stage, like, it's nearly impossible to get a scenario where there isn't going to be some certain level of compromise where games are clashing, and it's far from ideal, man. It's a disaster, especially in this particular case. But I just think it's so difficult that it's going to take some people to really get behind the table, get around the table, and actually put everything out in front of them and have a clear look at it, because I don't know that that's really happened, as of yet, which in 2018 you'd think that was something that would have taken place a long time ago.
Yeah, definitely. Let's have a look ahead to some of the games this weekend, because we might not have a lot of time, because there's a lot of games. It's a massive weekend of football. It's a festival of football upon us for the next 4 weeks, Mike. Kerry against Galway, I suppose, is the natural place to start. It's the 4 o'clock game on the Sunday. And I guess the opposite ends of the spectrum are very evident here when you look at their recent record in Croke Park. Kerry, a team obviously well used to the surrounds of Croke Park. Galway with a desperate record there in Championship over the last 15, 16 years. So, like, say, for example, in your days as a Kerry man going to Croke Park, do you get a natural boost from the stadium? Do you go in there rocking and thinking, we've got an advantage, we've got a couple of points of an advantage just by the virtue of playing here in the stadium?
Yeah, Kerry, anytime we went to Croke Park, it was always very natural surroundings, and guys were very comfortable, and you always had that kind of sense that you could do stuff in Croke Park and that maybe you couldn't do in other grounds, and you had that sense of a buzz and energy out of the whole ground. And I'm sure everybody gets that when they go there, but there's certainly a familiarity there with the Kerry players that they just know where they go in the dressing rooms. They know all those small little tiny little nuances that help make a little difference and make you more comfortable. Now there's so many new guys, just seven debutants obviously, so those guys will probably, even though they've been there through the minor runs and had great success in Kerry minor teams, they still won't have built up that same level of familiarity. But look, I don't think any Kerry guy ever complains about going to Croke Park to play a game. No,
definitely not. How do Galway win this game? How are they going to approach it? Because of what happened last year, there seemed to be a chasm between the sides, but they've narrowed that up nicely as a result of the league win in Tralee.
Yeah, I don't think last year's result was going to have any bearing on this thing. You've got 2 virtually different, teams. Galway in terms of their structure as opposed to the personnel, and Kerry's personnel is just so different than it was obviously 12 months ago. And I think this is a very winnable game for Galway. I don't think they will win it, but it's a game that can go either way, depending on how Kerry come out of the blocks. And when you look at what happened to Cork, against Tyrone, like, we just have no clue where this Kerry team were at. We thought we had a decent kind of idea of the level that they've been at and the performances they put in the 2 games in Munster Championship. But I mean, both Clare and Cork just capitulated, and we have no clue really how good or bad these young guys are just now. As good as we hope that Clifford and Shawnee Shea and Gavin White and all these guys are, and how good they've looked, this is going to be the real test of them, to see how exactly they stand up against this kind of Galway structure, I suppose.
Well, that's it. I mean, Galway breaking from deep is going to be the real litmus test of this Kerry team. Like, even if you look at the 2014 game between the sides, there was a couple of hairy moments for Kerry in the first half where Galway just tore through the middle of them, and that has been the story of Kerry ever since the All-Ireland in 2014, particularly last year against Mayo. Can you see this Kerry defence parting like the Red Sea again at multiple times in the business end of this championship?
Well, that's the question we won't know until 5:30 on Sunday. Like, even last year, you go back to 2014, you go back to last year's game, even when Kerry won that quarter-final comfortably, like, there was still loads of times where Cormac just put his head down and started running and was just gone by guys, and we probably didn't have the pace or the athleticism to actually stop those guys. Now, I think what you have done with so many young guys is you've introduced huge legs and energy and running power into all over the team, but particularly at the back as well. And you know, with the addition of James Weldon as the kind of basketball coach, who seems to be getting a lot of praise for some little structural kind of things that he's done. It'll be interesting to see, do those things culminate into a better defensive performance whereby we can stop the run, which is what Galway really want to do, obviously, through the likes of Cormac and Shane Welch and all these guys, you know.
Yeah, it's kind of ironic though, because, like, you're right, we have no idea how that defence will hold up, but what we do know is that Kerry seem to have become a more attacking team after what happened to Mayo last year, when clearly the defence was the issue. So maybe it's just, overcompensating at one end to make sure the weakness doesn't get highlighted too much.
Yeah, and again, look, if the three of us were playing against Cork, maybe we would have put up as big a score. It's like, I know we're all getting really excited, and we've done it down here. Look, we've got very excited about the attacking displays that we've seen against Clare and Cork, but Jesus, look, that was like junior opposition to what you're going to see against the Connacht champions. Like, these guys are after being built. I think that game against Kerry in the quarterfinal last year, where they just had no defensive clue of how to stop Donny, how to stop James O'Donoghue, how to stop Gainey. I think that game was kind of they went out and they got Paddy Talley as a maybe a defensive minded coach. And they've just become a different animal in terms of the way they set up completely. It's so obvious, obviously, what they're doing, but it's really effective, and they have the players with the athleticism and the defensive mindset to be able to do that. Now, it's just going to be fascinating to see if they can pull it off in Croke Park, and if they can make a big difference in terms of not allowing Kerry the space, the Cliffords and Shawnee Sheas and Gainies and the guys that look like they're really on fire. Can they really turn this into a claustrophobic kind of an atmosphere that they don't get time on the ball? And then the other side of it is, can they go and transition the ball and run down Kerry's throat? And Gavin White, while he looks so exciting, can he physically stand up to the likes of Comer and these guys who are much further down the line in terms of their physical development? So, there's loads of kind of imponderables that we just won't know about, and I think you're going to have such a better idea of both teams after this weekend, particularly Kerry, because we know what Galway have done, and we know what they've done in winning the Connacht title and beating Roscommon. We're just up in the air with this Kerry group at the moment.
Yeah. The last thing on Kerry then is the Kieran Donaghy element. You mentioned him obviously in the context of last year when he destroyed Galway really, but he seemed to be fairly sharp when he came on against Cork, and you do wonder, he seems to be a plan B this year, and he seems to be happy enough to be coming off the bench. But you do wonder against this Galway team, is there a potential for him to be a plan A?
I'd be surprised. I think like Paul Gainey and James O'Donoghue and David Clifford, I think that's your plan A for this year. And it's a pretty decent plan A. And then you're looking at Stephen O'Brien, obviously, on the wing. I would imagine it'd probably be the same six. Micheál Burns might be the only guy that comes under pressure on the other wing, obviously, because he was taken off in the months final against Cork. He was about the only guy that didn't, probably play well that day. And Kevin McCarthy came in and had a big game. So, you've got realistically now with the midfield of Dave Moran and probably Jack Barry, and then you're looking at Paul Murphy and Gavin White on the wings. You've got 8 or 9 guys really for Kerry who are potentially looking, starting a game, that they're guys who are potential scorers and they want to get forward and want to get on the scoreboard. And it's an impressive kind of a group that they have there with the legs and everything. So I think Donaghy's role is probably going to be, do we need to change it up here with 20 minutes to go or 15 minutes to go? And obviously they've probably worked on that as well. But it's a pretty good option B, but I think he's probably going to remain like that for a bit.
Okay, like in general, it's obviously a huge game. Every game is a huge game. It's like the World Cup groups. Win your first game or lose your first game, there's a huge consequence all on that. But particularly with the Super 8s, I mean, with these provincial winners, if you lose your first game, suddenly you've got a tricky test, you've got a tricky trip, you've got to go to Newbridge or Clones in Galway and Kerry's situations respectively.
Yeah, it's brilliant though, isn't it? I mean, like the thought of, 7 days later, you got to go up to Clones to play Monaghan in that kind of an atmosphere. It's completely novel. Like, I think there's more guys. Holding back and not going to the Galway game, as opposed and they're waiting to go to Clones the week after because they just want to get that idea of playing a championship game in that kind of a venue against that opposition, which is a completely new and novel idea for Kerry supporters. And then you got Kildare who are flying in the last couple of weeks after being dead men walking 3 weeks ago. Now they're the team that are getting quietly confident of maybe even sneaking out of the group and getting a big result over Monaghan. And it's just a really fascinating kind of a dynamic that we just haven't seen before, and I think everybody's looking forward to it. I mean, it took a while to get here, and it's kind of been inevitable the team that was going to be involved, but now that you're here, it's really fascinating stuff.
Yeah, and it all gets underway tomorrow with Roscommon Tyrone at 5 o'clock and then Dublin Donegal at 7 o'clock. Now, Dublin Donegal, I think we'd all be unbelievably excited for it if Paddy McBrearty was available, but still it's only one player missing, Mike. But ultimately, could the big impact of McBrearty's absence be the knock-on effect on somebody like Michael Murphy, that he can't be utilised as much maybe around the middle of the field and they might need him closer to goal to get a few scores?
I'm a huge Michael Murphy fan. I think he's up there with the best footballers in the country. But you're after taking like one of the top maybe 3 or 4 inside forwards, in the game out of your team. Not taking him out. I mean, the guy's injured. You can't do anything about it. But I'm not sure that you can replicate. The kind of, what you're after losing by losing McBrearty, obviously. If McBrearty was playing and the way they're playing under Bonner, I just think it'd be an absolutely fantastic game, the way they've kind of rejuvenated themselves a little bit again, and they've brought that kind of energy that they'd lost probably under Rory Gallagher, that they seem to be just, flying again now and putting up big scores in Ulster. I just think, and I don't think Dublin are probably, at the pitch of where they're going to be, but I just don't think without McBrearty that I don't think they're going to have enough,
Yeah, they're fairly light in the forwards outside of him. Like, from a Dublin perspective then, you look at the likes of Michael Darragh-Macaulay, who's having an unbelievable season. That completely transforms the way you look at this Dublin midfield, and kind of like the knock-on impact of the Michael Murphy question previously. Like, you can now station James McCarthy in a different role. Kieran Kilkenny doesn't necessarily need to help out in midfield that much. Like, that's huge. Like, Fenton, obviously the best footballer in the country to a lot of people, alongside a resurgent Michael Darragh-Macaulay. You can talk about Dublin fading potentially, but that's not one area where they're fading.
No, he's after giving a new life again. And I mean, it was strange, I suppose. He just kind of had reached the heights and then had started to fade out of it and hadn't the same kind of impact on the game that he had earlier when he started. But I mean, he's just he's like a wild horse. When that guy starts running and rampaging through the middle of the ground, whether it's winning frees or, he puts defensively, he puts you under so much pressure just with his running. He's never going to be a guy that's going to kill you with kick passing or with kick and scores from outside the 30. But he's just so aggressive in terms of his running with the ball, and it causes so much problem for other defences. And then on the other side of it, he's such a great foil for Fenton. He allows Fenton to go and get forward, knowing that I got a safety blanket behind me, that if my man goes or if somebody else goes, I'm going to go and cover. And he's a big part of it. But I still think if you can't take away from Dublin, you can't take away the fact that Diarmuid Connolly is over sunning himself, kicking ball over in the States. Like you just can't. Like Mayo had them on the rack. They had him by the throat last year until Connolly came on and changed the whole dynamic of the game. And when you take out a piece like that, and you're adding in, we'll say, Niall Scully obviously starting, or Paddy Andrews, who's probably not playing as well as he has done. I know you're talking about Cormac Costello coming back into the mix, and potentially Bernard Brogan maybe in another couple of games. And I still think they're going to be a little bit off where they were last year. Now that might still be good enough to go and win in All Ireland, but I still don't know that they're going to quite get back to where they have been in the past 3 years.
Yeah, like I tend to agree with you. And then I wonder how much have we read into Dublin and how much we've undervalued the absence of Keane O'Sullivan at times this season, and he's a piece of the jigsaw about to come back in, and I do wonder if Dublin are going to benefit from the added situational awareness they would have gained from not having Keane O'Sullivan there, from the likes of Johnny Cooper having to at times slot into that role, and those centre backs having to figure this out for themselves without Keane there.
Oh yeah, look, he's a huge part of what they've done. I mean, defensively, he's been the linchpin for the last number of years, and his ability and his communication with the other defenders to be able to get back at the top of the D and block off so much has been crucial to them. But I'm still talking the other side of the ball, as they say in American football. I still not sure that nobody. It mightn't be Kerry, it mightn't be Galway. They may go and win the All Ireland at a canter, and that's a distinct possibility. But I just think in those games, if they get to a situation like Mayo had them in, where they need scores and scoring is at a premium, and guys are able to run with them, do they have those guys that can come on now and change a game the way that Connolly was able to do? And I'm just not sure that at the top end of the field that those guys, like, you know, Brogan's injury, like, there's no guarantee Brogan's going to come back at the same level straight away this year that he was at. And there's just you're taking those pieces away, and eventually, you know, it's fine to look back in hindsight and say, yeah, look, you know, they were missing these guys. There's a possibility that attacking wise they may not be as strong as they have been in a couple of years. They probably go out now and kick 7-27 this weekend or something. But you know, that's my take.
I just want to get your quick take on Tyrone as well. Like, it's interesting to wonder how they are compared to this time last year, because we often forget that they absolutely destroyed Armagh in the quarterfinals last year. Yeah, and they look good. I don't think they're doing anything hugely different to what they were doing, you know, last year. People talk, you know, that they've changed the whole pile. I'm not sure that they have changed the whole pile. I just think they're doing it a little bit better, what they are doing. You know, Conor McAlliskey is probably after getting a little bit better, and he looks like a real player for them. And they need those, you know, I suppose like Dublin, they need those inside forwards. They need those guys that can really be at the cutting edge, the way they had when they were really successful back in the 2000s. You still need those one or two guys that are you know, big score getters for you. And I just think their whole setup is very much based on the same setup as Colm Kavanagh dropping back. They're defensively so solid, so sound, and then getting out and using their runners, using the pace and the athleticism they have. And again, with the likes of McAlliskey and guys that are able to get scores now, it's just happening a little bit easier for them. And it's good to see him there. I think the Super 8 is better with a good Tyrone, and they're certainly playing at a decent level right now. Yeah, we've almost got the full house with Division 1 teams in the Super 8s. I do want to ask you for your quick predictions on the 4 games, Mike, if you wouldn't mind. I think you're calling Kerry in the first game we talked about. Yeah, like 3 out of the 4 games I think are a flick of a coin. I honestly do think that Kerry Galway could go either way. I think Kerry will do it. I think they've got the forwards that are be good enough to pick holes in that Galway structure. But again, it wouldn't shock me if Galway were to win the game. But I think Kerry might get over the line. I think that Dublin-Donegal game is the only one I think is a banker for Dublin. I just think while Donegal will make it uncomfortable and they'll make it tough on them, I think without McBrearty, I just don't think they're going to have enough to actually to get over the line. I think Kildare-Monaghan could be the best game of the weekend. I think that's going to be an absolute cracker. And again, it's a flip. I honestly think that Kildare, the way they're so resurgent now with the confidence and the enthusiasm that they have, it's amazing where they've come from in the space of a couple of weeks. But, you know, it wouldn't shock me either way, but I think Kildare might get over the line there. And who's our last one? Roscommon Tyrone. Again, I think, you know, with Hindley Smith and you know, Cathal Craig and these guys, they're lifting as well, and they put in, while Armagh made a good shake of it the last day, they put in a big performance. You probably give a nod to Tyrone tentatively, but again, nothing would shock in 3 out of the 4 games, really. Good stuff, Mike. Enjoy the weekend's football. We'll chat to you soon. Okay, no bother. Take it easy.